A few months ago, two high school friends went to a hospital to record a live video to experience its paranormal activities firsthand. In room 402 on the 4th floor, the director of Ganjiam Hospital had committed suicide, and since then, no one had ever been able to open the door despite multiple attempts. When these two friends tried to open the room, they mysteriously disappeared that very night. After this incident went viral, Hujun, the owner of the Horror Times YouTube channel, planned to visit the hospital to investigate the truth behind the disappearance of these two friends and to confirm whether Ganjiam Hospital was truly haunted. Hujun's team consisted of Lee, Park, and Ji-hoon. However, this time, Hujun also invited 3 subscribers to join the team: Jimmy, Charlotte, and Mimi. After explaining the plan to everyone, Hujun and his team set off for their destination. Their target was to reach 1 million views, which would generate thousands of dollars in earnings through an agency. To capture exclusive footage at every location during the live video, they brought multiple sensor cameras, drone cameras, and electromagnetic sensors. Hujun controlled all of these from outside the hospital, while the rest of the team set up camp a little distance away. Once Hujun was settled in the control room, the others finished their dinner and started walking towards the hospital. On their way, they noticed a large diaper lying on the ground and jokingly tied it to a tree as a marker. Then they entered Ganjiam Hospital. Before starting the live video, Lee, Park, and Ji-hoon set up cameras and lights on each floor. Once everything was ready, the YouTube live stream began. The hallways and rooms of Ganjiam Haunted Asylum, which had witnessed many deaths, still lay abandoned. To provoke spirits on the first floor, Charlotte poured holy water into a small container. Since she had previously visited 3 haunted locations, she had a basic understanding of paranormal investigations. The entire team then moved to the 2nd floor. While explaining the function of the sensor cameras to the viewers, the door behind them suddenly slammed shut, marking their first paranormal experience. The room where this happened was the director's room, which contained group photos of mental patients with the director, along with some pictures of the director with a former Korean president. These photos revealed that the director was fond of table tennis, and some people had previously claimed to have heard the sound of a ping-pong ball bouncing on the 4th floor. At that moment, strands of hair were seen falling from the ceiling. Charlotte and Park captured this footage and then split into groups. Returning to the 1st floor, Charlotte, continuing her tradition of marking her 4th paranormal adventure, wrote her name as graffiti on the wall. Just below her writing, someone had previously written, "Let's leave here." Upon entering the adjacent laboratory, they found bandages, medicines, syringes, a microscope, and a doll inside a cabinet. Interestingly, the same doll was seen in a group photo held by one of the patients. Charlotte recalled that a photo taken in this exact spot had gone viral on social media, showing a shadowy figure standing behind a girl. Just then, Charlotte accidentally stepped on a rotten chicken leg. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Mimi discovered a table tennis board on the 3rd floor, which the director once used. This floor housed mental patients, and the bathroom next to it was the most infamous haunted spot. Directly across from the bathroom was a water storage tank. By this time, Charlotte's group had reached the cursed room 402. Though no one had ever been able to open it before, they were determined to succeed. By then, the live stream had surpassed 55,000 views. Overjoyed, Hujun checked every camera, knowing that the real show was about to begin. They planned to perform a ritual to summon spirits in the director's room. As a guest, Mimi completed the ritual. Suddenly, the candlelight went out, and the bells hanging from a red thread started ringing. Sensing danger, everyone rushed outside. Mimi noticed that as soon as the paranormal activity began, all the sensor cameras had mysteriously turned in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, Lee and Park received a call from Hajun, which led them to separate from the rest of the group. This is where the biggest twist occurred. Everything that had happened so far was fake. Hajun, Lee, and Park had planned everything in advance without informing the others, ensuring that both the audience and their teammates believed the supernatural activities were real. Satisfied with their plan, Hajun encouraged them to continue, as the views had already crossed 100,000. Just as Hajun ended the call, his monitor screen started malfunctioning. However, it quickly returned to normal, followed by an eerie gust of wind. The team continued investigating the laboratory, but was shocked to see that the doll had moved from the cabinet. Charlotte was certain that the doll was inside the cabinet earlier, meaning someone else was in the room. Lee picked up the doll and started recording, but Charlotte, terrified, screamed. knowing that cursed objects and haunted locations should never be touched. Unbeknownst to them, this was all part of Lee and Park's staged plan. Their trick significantly boosted the view count. Taking advantage of the situation, they convinced the others to briefly cover room 402 before leaving. Following Hajin's instructions, Mimi and Jimmy went to the 4th floor to install an infrared flash on the ceiling. Meanwhile, in the collective care room, the group found rows of wooden boxes attached to the wall where patients were once treated. Strangely, the air holes, which should have been positioned near the mouth, were instead placed near the chest. Out of curiosity, Lee inserted his hand into one of the holes, only to feel something grab his arm from inside. While everyone else was horrified, Lee was secretly pleased that his prank was working. However, Ji-hun grew suspicious and insisted on putting her hand inside. Lee tried to stop her, but she forcibly did it anyway. The moment Ji-hun inserted her hand, something grabbed her tightly from inside. She screamed in terror as Lee and Park quickly pulled her arm out, only to discover deep scratch marks on her skin. Park was left speechless. At that moment, one of the wooden box lids flew open on its own, and Charlotte's scarf lifted into the air as if someone was holding it. This meant that the paranormal events they had been faking had now started happening for real. But an even bigger shock awaited them downstairs. The wall where Charlotte had written her name, just below the words, "Let's leave," had changed. It now read, "Let's die." Terrified, Ji-hun and Charlotte abandoned the live stream and fled the hospital. By then, Lee had called Hajun and explained the entire situation. Hajun, reviewing the recording, confirmed that the wall had indeed originally said, "Let's leave." However, since the view count had surpassed 300,000, Hajun lied to them, saying it was just their imagination. He claimed that Ji-hun had probably faked her fear just to escape. But when they started arguing about Charlotte's scarf mysteriously floating, Lee and Park decided to follow Hajun's orders and continue covering room 402 and the upper floors. But in this case, the share of money from the video has to be increased by 20% for everyone. Hajun, having nothing else to do, agrees to the proposal. But here comes another twist. Before entering room 402 in the video, Hajun sees everyone in the group standing in front of the camera. But the question is, if everyone is in front of the camera, then who is filming the video? And just then, the camp's lights go off. The monitor display starts malfunctioning again, and a cold breeze flows outside. Meanwhile, Ji-hun and Charlotte keep running. As soon as they spot the tree marked with a diaper, they sigh in relief. On the other hand, hearing noises from the supply room, they start recording a video. But as soon as they hear the sound of a wheelchair from behind a cupboard, every single item in the room gets stuck to the ceiling. The two of them don't even get time to process what is happening. Some unseen force starts hurling heavy objects at them, one after another. Lee loses consciousness after being hit hard on the head, and just then, an invisible force drags Park away, causing him to pass out. However, ignoring all this, Hajun's focus remains on the video's live count, because the views have crossed 800,000. Meanwhile, Ji-hun and the others are not in a good state either. Every time they try to escape, they somehow keep coming back to the same tree with the diaper, like a maze. Suddenly, Ji-hun catches a familiar stench of rotten chicken leg. Charlotte notices that the jungle is littered with the lab's medicines and injections. Then she sees Ji-hun standing with his head down, facing the opposite direction. Trembling with fear, Charlotte places her hand on his shoulder, and as soon as she does, Ji-hun starts behaving strangely. Suddenly, something lifts Charlotte into the air and hurls her away. She starts running breathlessly. A camp is visible ahead, but as soon as she enters, her body turns cold. Charlotte finds herself standing in an empty hospital hall. In a dark corner far away, Ji-hun is mumbling something softly. At her feet lies that same doll. As Charlotte fearfully shines the torchlight ahead, she sees a hideous naked man whose body has been stitched from the chest to the stomach. He is slowly advancing toward the doll. This monstrous man was in the group photo with the director, holding the same doll. Just then, the door outside slams shut and the grotesque figure attacks. After that, no one knows how much time has passed. When Park regains consciousness, he suddenly remembers Jimmy and Mimi, who are unaware of everything happening. They are busy trying to open the door to room 402. When Park urges them to drop everything and escape, Hajun gets furious because the views are just a little short of 1 million. Hajun calls them and pressures them to open the door. At that moment, Park announces in the live video that from the beginning they had been faking everything, but after touching that ritual doll, everything happening now is real. Ganjiam is truly a haunted place. They are unsure if their friends are even alive. However, they must find Lee and escape the hospital at all costs. Realizing that the situation is getting out of control, Hajun sets up the camera, grabs a drone, and heads toward the hospital himself. By then, someone from the darkness hurls a ping-pong ball forcefully at Park and the others. At the same time, someone inside starts trying to unlock the door to room 402 from within. Then, they hear Charlotte's horrifying scream from inside. Terrified, Park tries to run, but suddenly, the motion sensor lights on the ceiling start flashing one by one. However, as far as their eyes can see, no one is there except the three of them. From outside, Hajun tries to use the drone to see what is happening inside the hospital. What he sees paralyzes him with fear. Someone is chewing on Charlotte's head in front of an open window on the upper floor. Meanwhile, inside room 402, as the darkness fades, they realize they are standing in water. There are no windows in the entire room. Even the door they entered through has disappeared. Suddenly, they all look up in shock, because instead of a ceiling, there is floating water above them. But how is this possible? Shaking in fear, Park suddenly sees a hand reaching from behind everyone's heads, trying to grab them. At that moment, he senses another presence and, using the night vision camera, spots a girl in a school uniform standing there. This is the same girl who went missing from Gonjiam Asylum a few months ago. Just then, a bone-chilling sound echoes. The camera starts flickering, and in front of them stand the 42 deceased patients. And then it happens. With each of their deaths, Gonjiam Asylum slowly comes to life. Driven by greed for views, Hajun finally enters the hospital. As soon as he steps inside, the atmosphere turns freezing cold. Thick, dark shadows engulf everything with time. Turning on the night vision camera, he suddenly feels someone's touch on his back. The more he turns the camera around, the stronger the breathing behind his shoulder becomes. And then it happens. The mysterious director's spirit throws Hajun down from above. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself tied to a wheelchair. At that moment, he sees an invisible force dragging Lee away. Through the closed door, the asylum's mental patients are staring at him unblinkingly. With Lee's final scream, the wheelchair rolls straight into room 402. The views have now dropped from 1 million to just 502. On the live video's cover photo, the girl who was sitting suddenly stands up and disappears. In other words, the director had been watching them from the very beginning. After all these events, the hospital is now silent. A chilling wind flows freely through the corridors, and just then the boiling holy water placed in a pot reminds us they are still there.